Oh, hi there. Glad you could stop by. If we haven't met yet, my name's Jared. Now you're probably wondering why a video about assembling a Miracle Truss building would start with a scene of an excavator unloading logs. My wife and I decided to start an Alaska homestead so we could simplify, refocus, and reconnect. Having a good shop is key to this whole dream. We spent some time looking at the various options and eventually settled on the Miracle Truss shop. Now you might think it's odd that building a shop would help me and my wife reconnect. You'd probably be right to be skeptical. On the surface, it seems like buying your wife that shotgun that you really wanted for Christmas. You say it's for her, but really, everybody knows the truth. There's probably some of that going on here. But the part of Alaska we've moved to gets a lot of rain. Last year, about 160 inches if I remember right. If I want to be able to build a house and everything else that comes with a homestead, I'm going to have a dry place to do it. And the shop's that place. Because of that, all of our hopes and dreams center on this shop. If this shop doesn't happen, none of the rest of the plans we have for our next 20 years will happen either. Now, I'm a fairly handy guy. I don't have a lot of experience, but I can usually figure things out. The instructions that came with the Miracle Truss building had a lot of pictures, so that should help. Because everybody knows you don't read the instructions anyways. But this can't be any worse than a piece of IKEA furniture. Now to raise the stakes a little higher, about a third of the money that we had to put into a house is going into the shop. If I don't get the shop up, not only will I not have a place to build the house, but all that money I spent on it will be wasted. That's not a good Christmas present. Now I'm not afraid of hard work. And honestly, I'd rather do it myself, even if there are imperfections, than pay somebody else to do it perfectly. Which brings us back to why I was unloading all those logs. Since I like to do things the hard way, every bit of lumber I'm going to use to build this Miracle Truss building, I'm going to cut out of logs on a sawmill I've never used, all by myself. That should raise the stakes sufficiently. I won't go into all the struggles of cutting my own lumber, but there were many. And there were times when I was afraid I wasn't even going to get the lumber for the building cut, let alone the building up. So with that background, we're going to see if we can get this Miracle Truss shop up all by ourselves. Well, not exactly all by ourselves. I'm not going to give you a tool list, but one of the things you gotta have is a good set of friends. There's no way one or two people can make this happen. Now I've got some great friends, but their help doesn't come cheaply. The first week they were up helping me, I think we went through 60 crab. Of course, we were able to catch those out of the bay, so that wasn't too bad. But you're definitely going to need some help for this project. So go ahead and get that arranged right now. Alaska's going to do everything she can to keep me from getting this shop built. Building this shop is kind of the price of admission. If I can't get it built, my Alaska dream's going to die before I even get started, and I'm going to have to head back to the lower 48 with my tail between my legs. In addition to all those rain days that Alaska is sure to throw at me, she's full of surprises, always looking for ways to mess things up. Supplies are hard to come by. If something's missing or broken, it could take weeks or months to get it found and fixed. When we started the shop, we had 2 years before we were going to move out to the homestead. Being in Alaska, getting there is difficult. I only had 1 or 2 weeks a year that I could go work on the shop. So time is definitely not in our favor. The neighbors are all great people, super helpful, but they just kind of sat back and watched. They've seen so many people come and go that they don't really feel like investing too much until you've shown you've got what it takes to live here. If I don't get this building finished, for them, it'll just be another shrug of the shoulders and somebody else that didn't make it. For me, I'll have to live with not even having what it took to start living in Alaska, not to mention all those fishing trips that I already promised my friends for their help on the shop. I've tried to go step by step and show all the details, but if there's something that I missed or just doesn't seem clear, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'd be happy to answer your question. Culminating day. Put a lot of work into getting ready for the concrete. Concrete came today. Everything's poured. We'll see how well it turned out, but here's all the forms. Really won't know till we go to put it up, but I measured everything like 6 times, so it should be pretty close. Got their cutting table all done. With the concrete all poured and the lumber all cut, I was out of vacation days. Everything ended up sitting over the winter, and one of the mistakes I made was leaving everything banded together. This caused a little bit of warpage. So if you have to store it for a while, go ahead and cut those bands. I was hoping we could assemble everything on the ground and just raise it in place. But physics doesn't work that way. Time for another method. Next we tried assembling a half at a time, rest in the middle and the center, and then joining them on the scaffolding. It took a full day to get those two up. Definitely not a great method either. This is probably a good time to mention that this isn't an advertisement for Miracle Truss. I paid full price for my building, and I'm going to be really honest about the things I liked and the things I didn't. So it turns out, if you actually read the instructions, the recommended method for doing a building of this size, a 40 by 60, is to put the two pillars in place and then put the trusses on top. Who knew? They kinda knew what they were talking about. Almost a full day. We were actually done before 5 o'clock, which is not too bad. We got 5 more supports up this afternoon, or today, just finished. Now we'll have to square it and everything. We got some progress done. It was kind of more another one of those figuring out how not to do it sort of days. Didn't find the instructions incredibly clear, so we had all the arches up. We decided to get all the wind bracing in, which ended up being a mistake. I thought that the wind bracing would help keep everything where it needed to be, but it bends so easily that it doesn't help with structure, and then it gets in the way when you try and get the trusses a proper distance apart. Eventually we got it figured out, but don't do that. Put the bracing in when you're all done.
That's it.
Last one, huh? Here we made our next mistake. We moved part of the tin closer to the building, so it'd be easier. However, when we did that, we flipped it end for end. So about halfway through the building, we ended up with tin that go in the opposite direction. And where those two directions met, the roof leaked a little bit. We'll have to go up there and caulk it. Latest crisis, not really a crisis, but a little setback. Turns out this board is supposed to be on this side. Rather than unscrewing all these and messing with that, we're just gonna
put another 2x8 on this side and run it all the way around and get back to business. Yeah, these sticking out of your trim would look kind of bad.
Here's where we ended up swapping it end for end. Oops. One of the many nights of crab. These were long, long days. So the rain held off until about 15 minutes after we were all done. Maybe Alaska isn't as evil as I thought. So a couple of the wind brace brackets didn't get welded on in the right place, but Miracle Truss sent me some spares, and I ended up welding them where they needed to be. Not a big deal. Next, I welded the end support columns to the trusses. They aren't structural, so you just got to keep them steady. That seemed easier than drilling holes and putting in bolts. Here we are, it's the next summer. Everything's held together really well. Now we just got to put the ends on and then start putting siding on the sides. Sounds easy. Where everything came into contact with the concrete, we used a breathing strip and treated lumber. That's the only lumber I didn't cut in this whole building. Then we held those in place with the braces between the columns. The vertical bracing is really important just to keep everything from sagging. Next, we built a box header. Thank goodness we had a forklift to lift it into place. On the end, we put soffits on the eaves. Time for the next header. This one's 18 feet long. It'll be a little heavier. And that hemlock has gotten hard in the last year.
Too easy. Quick.
138 and a half.
138 and a half.
That sound is the sound of being dry. And it's a phenomenal thing. Still got to cut in a man door, because now you have to walk all the way around to get in, or do the limbo.
And we got a door.
This one wall weathered the winter pretty well. We'd hoped to get them all up, but that didn't happen. Now it's another year. Now things are getting down to the wire. We've moved up. It's still summer, so we got a little time. But now things really got to get dried in. A shop without walls definitely wasn't what my wife had in mind. Or me either. We chose to do cedar siding instead of metal siding, mostly because it would fit in better with the area, but I think it's a little quieter and maybe a little drier. This won't be much use if you end up using metal siding on your building, but the tar paper with the plywood spacers and cedar siding has kept things really dry for us. Basically, what I have here is my soffit, and then I'm putting in some greenhouse plastic so that I get light. So basically I have my flashing to prevent water from going back behind the eaves, or
I have my flashing to prevent water from going back behind my siding. Then I put in this 2x5, which lines up pretty good with this. And then, so I screwed in my greenhouse plastic on this side, and then I'll screw it in back on this side. And then wherever my eaves came down, I just did some bug meshing and then some galvanized meshing so that I shouldn't have any birds or anything get back up. So this will just let me know which boards I need to cut.
Okay. Somebody put a steel post right there. And I remembered. Good. Doesn't seem like a ton of work, but there's a lot of little piddly stuff you got to do, like putting in soffits and those sort of things. All of which I climbed up in the rafters and hung on to for dear life while screwing them into place. But got her done. And just like that, the back side has all the board and battens on. Here we put the cedar soffit into place, and then we'll put the metal exterior flashing over it. Gives it a nice, neat, finished look. We were originally going to have a narrow window across the top on the front as well, but we decided we wanted to let more light in.
Pretty close. Right there. Cut a reed cut. Then cut about an inch off. And up at the top, there was a little, about a 1-inch slot.
You'll probably want to pour concrete at first. But here, if you try and pour concrete uncovered, you're very likely to have it rain and ruin the finish. Plus, I'm not exactly sure how I want to use all the shop yet, so I don't want to spend a lot of money on concrete, only to rip it up to put in a drain or something like that. Another issue we ran into is the metal bracket kind of got in the way of the garage door rails, so we had to use an angle grinder just to get them out of the way. Only took 10 minutes or so. Eventually I'll pour concrete here, and these forms will be in place when I'm ready. But for now, I just need a flat place for the garage doors to land. As far as the garage doors and rails, you just hang them from the roof like you would any other structure. I did find it easy to use ratchet straps just to hold everything at the right level while I was doing it.
Just lifted a little ways, because
Look at that. Look at that.
I can't tell you how big of a relief it was after all the stops and starts, problems that we ran into, to finally get our shop dried in. Looks like we stand a chance at this Alaska homestead after all. Good luck on your shop if you decide to build one, and I hope you'll join us on some more of our adventures. Till then.